Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Hong Kong Electronic Forum, HealthTech Innovation, which is jointly organized by the Hong Kong Trade Development Council and the Hong Kong Electronic Industries Association, as well as co-organized by the Vocational Training Council. I'm Brian from the Zhou Yukho Technology Center for Innovative Medicine, Faculty of Medicine, the Chinese University of Hong Kong. And I will be the moderator for today's forum. The rapid advancement in the electronics sector has driven innovation in the healthcare industry, which has come under the spotlight during the pandemic. Today, we are excited to have 4 speakers in the healthcare products industry joining us to share how progress in the electronics industries helps keep us alive and healthy. The speakers for today are Dr. Lydia Leung, CEO, Belun Technology, Mr. Roy Lim, Vice President, Tung Hing Automation Investment Limited, Mr. Stuart Moran, CEO, RETRACTION Limited, and last but not least, Dr. Hasan Gadjali, co-founder, Meridian Innovation. Without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Lydia Leung, CEO, Belun Technology, to present the sharing for us. Belun has recently upgraded their sleep monitoring wearable ring for hospitals to monitor patients affected by COVID-19. Lydia, over to you, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lydia from Belun Technology. Belun Technology is a health tech company founded in Hong Kong back in 2016, which is almost 4 years ago. Now we have currently 24 employees in Hong Kong taking care of the R&D and also production and also marketing of the device. We developed the Belun ring, which is the first FDA-cleared wearable device. Combined with our proprietary AI, we have been used in sleep health and also cardiovascular risk analysis. And with the development of the ring, it has helped us to win over 10 worldwide awards because we are making a medical device. And our device is FDA 510K clear, and that's why our company is ISO 13485 governed. And also, recent year, we have won the Red Dot Design Award in Germany and also the Asia Pacific ICT Award. And all our product and also AI system are well protected by patents over the world. And our value proposition of our company is that the ring is not only for sleep apnea, but also it is a digital sleep diary which provide medical evidence for doctors, such that we can, through early screening, through training our lifestyle, our intervention, and finally evaluate different effectiveness of some intervention, such that we can provide health tips and also health risk analysis for doctors to improve the treatment outcome. And so overall, our core competence is not only on the sensing technology, but very important is the system in the cloud, which through machine learning, data analytics, and finally come up with some solution and also treatment, personalized treatments for the patient. And the first platform that I would like to share with you is the Belun Sleep. And you can see that even though we've spent about 1/3 of our life in sleep, but still a lot of people complain about their sleep. Why? Because about 30% of them have insomnia and about 10% have sleep apnea. But unfortunately, 80% of them having the sleep disorder are undiagnosed. And this will lead to a lot of chronic disease issues, which include heart-related like hypertension, and for brain-related, related to dementia or even stroke. And recently, we also know that sleep will also affect the effective secretion of insulin, which will affect the diabetes treatment effectiveness. But why people having this kind of sleep disorder are usually untreated is because traditionally, in order to do a sleep test, you need to get into a hospital, which is expensive, inconvenient, and uncomfortable. And that's why we come up with the idea of the Belun ring, which allows you to do the test comfortably at home. What you need to do is that you just need to bring the ring back home, wear it for 3 nights when you sleep, and then after you upload the data to our cloud, through our proprietary AI, we'll generate a comprehensive sleep analysis report for you. You can know your efficiency in sleep, the issue having insomnia, then we can identify the time that you're having the insomnia, and also we'll let you know the root cause of different sleep problem, like sleep apnea, insomnia, or any other problem. And for example, when people complain about their insomnia, when they wear the ring, we can visualize what is the timing that they have the problem. Like they have the difficulty to get into sleep, or they will wake up in the middle of the night, or they will wake up early. And this will help the doctors and physicians to provide personalized treatment plan. And like people, when they complain about insomnia, but finally we found out that he or she is not indeed an insomnia, but she is having a very severe sleep apnea. And under this situation, you can see that with the prescribe of the true treatment using some respiration machine, the performance can be significantly improved. And you can see that from the apnea events, 60 per hour reduced to less than 10. And also very important, and you can simply just look at the mean pulse rate. It reduced from 88 to 67. And also the overall time that the oxygen saturation below 90% is reduced from 80 minutes to 1 second. And this will significantly help the patient, especially she also already has cardiovascular problem. And that's the reason why during COVID, when a lot of people feel that they are very anxious and they will have problem in sleep, we are working very closely with different NGO who are taking care of the mental health to use our ring as a sleep diary, such that they can help the patient to figure out the problem that they really have. We also work very closely with clinics and also the large corporate, such that they can provide the employee wellness to their employee, especially during COVID, because parents is busy for their own business. At the same time, they need to take care of their kids. So we'll be able to pitch into their sleep and to see whether they really have a rest or they still feel very stressful during sleep. And so it's very important is that Belun ring is not only a gadget, it is a FDA Class 2 clear medical device. And also our AI analysis has been clinically validated in Hong Kong and in the US. And so we have a very high sensitivity and specificity when treating sleep disorder, and for accuracy more than 90%. And because of COVID, and we also, as mentioned with Brian before, is that we also make use of our ring to help in the COVID for the medical IoT system. And what our company has developed is that through our ring, with a little hub, which can directly connect it and stream the data through cellular network, doctors and nurses can remotely monitor the status of their patient, no matter they are quarantined at home, a hotel, or a conventional center. And very important is that we also have the back-end AI cloud system, which allows the streaming of the data for future analysis. And so we can understand under what condition, okay, those patients will deteriorate and what kind of treatment can be personalized for different patients with their chronic disease record. So here is some of the report of the application of the system in the US and in Hong Kong. And so basically, when you're talking about what Belun is doing, our major customer currently is some B2B customer, which include like medical center, they will have the HealthTech or the hospital, and even dentists, because there are a lot of solution now is providing by the dentist to treat sleep apnea. So with our ring, they will be able to evaluate the treatment effectiveness and also enhance the adhesion of the patient to the treatment. We're also working very closely with insurance company like life insurance and health insurance, because our information is very important, especially stress and sleep, which will affect the health risk of a patient. We also, as I mentioned before, after COVID, we work very closely with the large corporate, such that they can provide some sleep health and also mental health treatment or evaluation for their staff, for occupational safety and staff benefits. So, and this the overall sharing of my slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia, for your sharing of your insights. Next, we will have Mr. Roy Lim, Vice President of Tung Hing Investment Limited, to share on how his robotic technology were adopted and help us to fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Roy Lim, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Roy, and I'm here to introduce how our robots suddenly helped the industry with the medical and elderly sector. So we built a robot last year, and it was able to move in an indoor area and then self-navigate around. But suddenly this year, we are very needed. Why? Because everyone has to keep a 1.5 meter distance in between each and every other people. So our robot suddenly becomes a mobile computer. We can move around at the house and elderly center or between beds. So now all we can do is connect some sensors or connect some video equipment, and we can start serving patients and elderly people at their bed. So let's look at a little of what we can do. So first of all, we are able to connect the elderly people and their family, because if you are a patient, you might be infectious, people cannot visit you anytime, or elderly is not recommended to go out. So very simply, you can ask the family to control the robot and move to the bed, and then talk to you anytime they want. And then we build more products on top of this mobile platform. First of all, we can see there's a disinfection machine on the left side, and that is the STEAMY, we call. And then there's ThermoTEMI, which is a infrared sensor built on top of the robot, and that can allow a lot of patients to be taken, temperature to be taken by a robot, and they don't have to actually move around, or there is no nurse that has to take the temperature sensor around. And we see a TEMI IAQ on the second to the right side. That thing can actually take PM 2.5, PM 10, PM 1, CO2, and detect all the air quality in an indoor area. So now we can detect if there is some dusty area that has the potential to actually carry the viruses around. Of course, at the same time, we need to build a UV TEMI that helps people to disinfect their toilet or patient's bed, so that everyone has a clean area to live in. So we have sold so many of these products in the past year that we are now working with all the NGO in Hong Kong, and we are working with all the technology partners, big companies. So let's take a look at how it actually works. So let's look at ThermoTEMI first. Can we play the left video, please? So as you can see, a lot of showroom or offices, they want you to declare whether you have been sick, whether you have been quarantined, but they don't want you to touch the pen. They don't want you to fill in a form, because the pen can actually become infectious if everyone touches it. So now we use the robot and ask questions when people comes in, and we know exactly what happened to that person. We record it, and then at the same time, at the end of the questionnaire, we will take the temperature of that person to verify if he's lying, and we allow them to go in. So it becomes a really convenient and no-touch technology. Now let's go to the right video. So instead of, can we play the right video? Yes. So instead of just asking the person to go to the robot can actually move to the person. So what does that mean? That means the patients or elderly people, they don't have to get out of their bed. And all we can do is the robots move around, taking their temperature while they are sleeping, and report to the nurses anything that happens to them. For example, if somebody is 37.5 degrees or above, we will report it, get someone in emergency to isolate them. Or if there is a very low temperature, that means somebody has left the bed, and that's not desirable as well. So let's end this video and then look at the next slide. Let's look at how STEMI work. Can we play the left video, please? So other than controlled area like a restaurant, like a hospital, we also need to disinfect restaurants. So we use the STEMI and we release chlorine dioxide to help disinfect all the COVID-19 viruses. Oh, actually, this chlorine dioxide is an edible solution, which means we don't want to eat it, but it's edible. It's food grade. So actually, the United States military, they use this to disinfect the apple and then they eat them. So let's look at the right video. We use this solution to help elderly centers, schools, lots of office space, and disinfect everything before people enter. We can schedule it to do it at 3 a.m. And it will automatically clean everywhere, and then people can live in the environment. So can we end this video and then go to the next slide? Dr. Timmy is also a carrier of vital signs sensors. So now we can actually bring these vital sign sensors to the bed and allow the doctor remotely view the live vital signs of patients and elderly people. And what we can do is take the pressure, the blood pressure, the blood glucose by the nurse who are stationed in the center, and the doctor can give a diagnosis, or they can use a video conference to take a look at your face and analyze remotely or frequently analyze remotely the patient's conditions. Now we have a lot more products that are made to automate everything in all kinds of environment, especially during the COVID-19 era. I would say this should be over very soon, but we have also designed some tray so that it can bring around items. And it's very important because we don't want people to be carrying stuff and then spreading the disease. Now we are so special this year, so we are covered by a lot of news, and we are being used by some elderly house, which allow all elderly to have one robot, which monitor their daily activities. So let's take a look at another technology that is very closely related to elderly people. This robotic hands can actually deal with stroke patients, and it can recover 90% of their movement after 6 to 9 months training. The concept is to help them reactivate their neurons in the brain, because when you have a stroke, only a small part of your brain died, and all you need to do is keep moving the hand and then reactivate the neurons around that little area, and your brain will learn how to move your hand again. So what can we do with all these kind of robots? We can actually use a visual analysis and help prevent people from falling. We can also use facial recognition and then a chat bot to help the bored elderly to reactivate the livelihood. And we can also prevent people from escaping. We can release aroma and then change the lighting and let them have a very nice aromatherapy. Also, we can, as we have already talked about, we can take remote vital signs and we can put all kinds of sensors that usually cannot move and now can actually go into each and every room to serve the patients. So that's how robotics actually have changed the medical world this year. And hopefully we will have a lot more chances and to help a lot more people. So thank you very much, and that's the sharing today.
Thank you, Roy, for your sharing. Now may I invite our next speaker, Mr. Stuart Moran, CEO, RETRACTION Limited, to talk about how robotic surgery will be transformed from friction to reality. Stuart, the stage is yours.
Oh, good morning, everyone. My name's Stuart Moran. I'm the CEO of RETRACTION Limited. Let me tell you a little bit about robotic surgery from fiction to fact. So we're going to be talking about robots that operate in the abdominal cavity. So this means we're working through small holes, and we're going to only talk about things that are in the abdominal cavity. That means the lower part of the body. These things are called laparoscopic surgery, minimal access surgery, or keyhole surgery. So this is the confines of this talk this morning. I want to tell you just very quickly why I'm here in Hong Kong. I came here to develop a device called Reveal. And Reveal is a laparoscopic device, as I mentioned earlier. What does it do? It's designed specifically to help the surgeon move the liver out of the way during laparoscopic surgery. So here we see the liver in its normal position, and what we want to do is move it out of the way so the surgeon can access the surgical target zone. So if you like, it's a device for mobilizing organs in the abdominal cavity. What do we use it for? You may be familiar with some of these procedures. Stomach reduction is their common name, gastric sleeve, gastric bypass, a lot of technology terms that may be not relevant, but essentially we are gaining access for the surgeon in the region of the stomach so he can operate on it. So that's what we do, and I know you all like to have a quick surgical view, so you've all hopefully had your lunch or your breakfast. There you go, and that's Reveal in action there, really mobilizing the liver in a very difficult to access space, and the surgeon's actually suturing in this location. Suturing meaning sewing the tissue together. Very, very quickly, just a few highlights. We're a Hong Kong limited company. I've been here since 2012. Took us a couple of years to develop the technology. But since then, we've done over 20,000 procedures. So this means that we have a little bit of a footprint in the world of medical devices. Not a huge number, but they're real patients, and we have real applications. So let's get on to the main part of the discussion. Why did and where did this fictional robotic robot come from, and how come it's now turned into a real solid fact? Well, in the mid-1980s, SRI, which is the Stanford Research Institute, primarily government-funded, came up with this concept they called telepresence. And if you look at this guy he's on one side of the screen here, I can't quite work out which side that is. He's actually operating remotely in something that looks like a vending machine. But it's very interesting. This is from the many, many years ago now. But some of the architecture is still present in the robots that we have today. This sort of idea that the surgeon will use his hands, and then the actual robot will do the procedure. Still present even 30-odd years ago. And this guy's kind of like my hero in the world of surgical robotics. Colonel Richard Satava's from the military, and he came up with this saying, "The king is dead, long live the king. Medicine's dead, long live medicine." And why is that pivotal? Is because, sorry for the graphic, it looks like something from a cartoon, but he talked many, many years ago about real remote surgery from a military sense, where the surgeon would be in a bunker, and the soldier perhaps is being operated in some remote location. And when he first talked about this stuff, I thought, this guy's really a little crazy. This could never happen. But as we're going to go on to see, the fiction has become fact. And he talked about, not to put any military slant on this, but he's a military guy. He talked about pilotless aircraft, and I thought this could never become true. And of course, we know from the media today that there are many unmanned aircraft flying around our skies in a military sense. So some of the things he talked about have become actual facts. And he was a genius because he actually highlighted some of the key things about medical robotics before anybody had really thought of them. High-resolution graphics, you can imagine you need to see inside the patient. The sensory feedback, so that what we now call haptic feedback, the tactile and force feedback, absolutely crucial. So he was really way ahead of his time. Out of that early SRI work came the computer motions in 1990, which seems an awful long time ago. And this device was supported by NASA and DARPA, being the US military. And it was the first voice control robot that was FDA approved. And they had sold 1,000 systems, so they did very well. Out of that came the next generation in collaboration with Stryker, which is a big company. So in 1996, they had the Zeus was developed, 6 degrees of freedom. And in 2001, there was a transatlantic surgery of 155 millisecond delay, which was good enough at the time. Moving along quickly, out of other developments came the intuitive surgical. And after a big patent battle, there was a merger in 2003, and that resulted in the Da Vinci robot, which you may have seen many pictures of this. It's become the de facto abdominal robot surgical solution. And it is indeed a very well used system now. So just to put some reality on it, just to clarify that these things really a fact, there's over 7.2 million procedures have been completed. There's over 5,500 systems installed around the world and in 67 countries. So that's very, very impressive. What's going on in the future? Many new systems coming to the market now. We could mention the Cambridge Medical Robotics, Microport, Medtronic, and Johnson & Johnson and Google are coming. And down the line, there are systems from Titan, Master, and our own MRC, which I'll mention very quickly. These things are really catching the investor's eye, and these are all billions of dollars. So companies are receiving big investments, $0.5 million investment into Microport, $250 million into Cambridge Medical Robotics, and they're accessing a fast-growing market. So medical robotics is growing at roughly 20% per annum, so it's a big market. What's the Hong Kong been doing? Well, if you take the historic view, we're actually, all the institutions are punching way above their weight. And we are formerly the largest Da Vinci training center in Asia, and we've trained over 1,300 surgeons. And CUK has really conducted some of the first operations of their type. So they've really, and not just CUHK, other institutions as well. There's an awful lot to come. We have a new center called the Multiscale Robotics Center as part of CUHK, which collaborating with the ETH in Zurich, Imperial College, and Johns Hopkins. And we received part of the government funding to support that institution. So there's a lot to come. And what does all that mean? Does it mean that every hospital will have a robot? Maybe. There's still many barriers. They're still very high cost, very expensive to maintain. There's a lot of surgeon and staff training time, long setup time. But a lot of these things are being resolved as we go forward. So this is a challenge for Hong Kong and for the institutions that are involved in medical robotics. These are the real problems that have to be solved. 5G, very, very important. We talked earlier a little bit about the response times. I believe 5G could revolutionize telesurgery. And in fact, our colleagues in China have already conducted a porcine lab, porcine model surgery over 5G, 50 kilometers away with 100 millisecond lead time lag. But 2 milliseconds have been promised over 5G. We will see. But what it does mean is that some of the things that we were talking about will drive costs down and will make robotic surgery and remote surgery more and more viable. The first transatlantic surgery I mentioned, there was over $1 million of communication, the investment in communications to complete that surgery. 5G will make that much more cost effective. So, the robots are coming. We have to embrace them. And maybe it won't look like this guy, but we hopefully will see more and more surgeries developed in Hong Kong. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stuart, for your sharing. Now, may I invite our next speaker, Mr. Hasan Gadjali, co-founder Meridian Innovation, to share with us how the company enabled thermal imaging technology to be more accessible and affordable to the mass market. Mr. Hasan, please.
Good morning. My name is Hasan Gadjali. I'm the co-founder of Meridian Innovation. Meridian Innovations, we are set up to enable thermal imaging solutions, but not just any thermal imaging solutions. It is the thermal imaging solution for commercial and consumer applications that will enable safer and better living. Our focus for monitoring human temperature in the present pandemic environment, increased security without sacrificing privacy, are some of the applications addressed by our products that we set up to develop 4 years ago. So Meridian Innovation Incorporated in 2016, we have developed the technology from the bottom up in terms of chip design, the sensor design, and we have fabricated and built the camera modules. And we just entered into mass production in July 2020. So what is thermal imaging and how it works? So in our recent interview by TVB, it explains how thermal imaging works and how it is being used in our daily life to measure human body temperature. Here's one of the video interview.
喺間諜電影或者科技片，你都可能見過呢一啲畫面。佢哋係透過熱成像輸出嘅圖像。
So it shows that in this video how you convert those different temperature into a visual form that you can see and identify by the color map. And this is one of our customer products that has the ability to make it very cost effective, can be used in the consumer and commercial applications.
由2016年開始，以香港同新加坡作為開發基地。熱成像咧就同我哋一般見到嘅鏡頭熱成像都係用一啲絲木都係感光咁啊睇翻嗰個熱度嘅唔同啦，而去做一個成像。咁但係咧眼咧係睇唔到。 So
in this video, it talks about how the infrared is not visible to eyes, but it's visible to sensor technology. And here's an example of our modules that is in our production line. And how we are able to fabricate the sensor in the Hong Kong Science Park labs.
只有几个特别的这个厂商有这个厂能够做氧化钛，但是 CMOS 厂在全球很多，台湾很多，中国大陆也很多。但是最重要的重点说，比如你要做大量，你要重新盖一个厂，这个成本是特别高的。如果成本高，你的零件就会增加成本。那我们现在用的是已经盖好的厂。 而且我们用的厂还是比较老的厂，可能折旧都已经折旧完，所以我们在这个厂。
So in this section, it talks about using a CMOS process technology that basically enable a low cost and high volume production capability that will enable the technology for the mass market.
比如像这么大的晶片，大概10块钱就可以做。
佢哋主要做企業生意，將熱成像相機模組出售俾商業客戶，商業客戶再組裝成溫度偵測器、監控器等嘅產品。呢啲產品一般會再賣俾醫療機構同埋老人院等等。
因為這個熱成像是一個新的產品，一般上的模組在市場上跟我們同樣的規格都要賣到150塊美金。 我们现在都在40多块左右，很多这些产品的厂商在内地的或者在大陆的，他们都希望降低成本，增加量。现在我们这个产品是用6寸的技术，然后我们会挪到8寸的技术。8寸的这个晶圆就比较大，我们一个晶圆就可以放很多芯片，价钱就会更有优势，然后利润也会更好。
按地區劃分，而家大約8成嘅訂單嚟自內地，剩低2成係歐美等嘅海外市場。客戶來源比較單一，超過7成係生產同疫情有關嘅商品。不過方寶橋唔擔心疫情減退之後會好明顯影響到佢哋嘅生意。
每一次疫情之後咧，大家都對嗰個健康啊都關心咗環境啊關心咗。咁所以我相信，就算疫情過後咧。 呢一啲咁樣嘅熱成像科技啊，大家去探測到呢啲人就出 出嚟又冇發燒咧，可能都會維持一段時間。
So here it says about recently such thermal imaging technology is used everywhere in our daily life to detect person having fever so as to mitigate COVID-19 spreading. Apart from COVID-19, for fever detection to mitigate COVID-19 applications, some of our other cases, use cases, includes baby monitoring, elderly cares, hospital patients monitoring application. These usually are done through some kind of thermography application detection for identifying the blood flow issues also in the patient body. This is all healthcare related. Apart from that, we are also some other use case in our daily life in terms of home appliancing, to make sure that even some of the air conditioning in the market today, they want to be able to detect if somebody has a fever or not feeling well, so that the air condition is being set into maybe a fever mode or something like that. So all these are many use cases of thermal imaging sensor. Some of these products that are in the market today that will be launching in the coming futures includes our camera modules, thermal camera modules in these products. So if you look at this segment, it talks about the market evolution. So currently for thermal imaging market, it actually in 2019, there is about $4.3 billion US market for this thermal camera modules. And the market is projected to grow in 2020 to 7.6 billion. And this is because of the COVID-19 situations. And we see the major growth in this market is the yellow segment, which is thermography, that's growing from 1.12 billion to 3.19 billion. And this major growth is because you can see all these thermal imaging cameras all over in Hong Kong, as well as all over the malls and commercial buildings in all over the world. And another part of the major increase in volume that's projected for this year is also in surveillance from 623 million to $1.88 billion. So all this growth is going to be even more as we continue to develop the technologies. In the previous two presentations, it talks about robotics, and those robotics uses this kind of technology to identify if somebody has a fever or if the environment is safe for human to go in because of the temperatures. So the only thing to detect it is using a thermal imaging sensor to identify if such thing happens. So in order to do that, why are we able to provide such a solution? It's because we provide not only the chips, the technology, but we complete solutions for the development. We have a thermal imaging sensor, which is the module right here. And then we also built a thermal imaging processor because the module will output some ADC value, which is not meaningful for a person. What is important for a person is to output in our sensor an 80 by 62 resolution of temperature image. So this temperatures is in Kelvin format that can be converted into Celsius or Fahrenheit, which will then be able to input into the system for you to do all your AI and identification. So all these are done through our SDK and interfaces to our system. And we provide an evaluation kit for the customers or our partners to be able to integrate this solution into their system. So another example of how this fever detection work is usually you have a person coming into the hallway and their body actually radiates the heat. So you don't need any other function because the human body is actually a live subject and it actually radiates the heat. And the sensor with some ambient sensor and system setup will basically detect and take a photo of the body temperature of the human body. And through processing, we identify the hotspot. So basically you want to identify the forehead, which is the part of the body that doesn't change in temperature. It's not your nose or your ear, which always change the temperature frequently. And through single value statistic based on the skin temperature and based on the physical body modeling, we will be able to identify the body temperature. And here is what one of our data scientists developed in Hong Kong. And this is what is output from the cameras. And it's quite noisy. And after, through some processing and filtering, we'll be able to identify the part of the body that basically has the hottest temperature. So here is identify the forehead or the neck, which is both part of the body that has the consistent temperature. And is actually be able to monitor that his body temperature is at 35.6 degrees Celsius. So sensor is basically playing a big role in our daily life. As you know, CMOS image sensor that is used everywhere to take video, to take your image, to take your photo in your smartphone, everything has addressed this application for the last 25 years. You can use regular image sensor in communications, entertainment, and safety and security. This is in the visual spectrum. What Meridian is going to be addressing is for the consumer market of the future. And we see the potential of the $10 billion of sensor market going forward to the next 15 years. And the applications that will address in this market will be in health, safety, and environment. And this is the invisible infrared spectrum, which is 8 micrometer to 14 micrometer. And thank you, everybody. So we hope we work together and we can make this world a safer and better place to live using our thermal imaging sensor. Thank you.
Thank you, Hasan, for your sharing. So now let's start our roundtable discussion. Let me start with Lydia of Belun Technology. So in fact, I know Lydia for some years since she working in S3 as head of biomedical team. And I know you have a master degree in marketing as well, particularly when you start your own business. So my question is about strategy on marketing. You have put your product through US FDA, through a 510K clearance. Therefore, there's a predicate in US, like the non-in and some other predicates of non-in. So how would you differentiate your product for Belun to tap the market in Hong Kong and the worldwide market? Can you share with us more your strategy on this?
Yeah, indeed, when we first come up with the idea of using a ring to measure it, indeed, we are the first one to obtain the 510K clearance in the US in terms of a ring form factors, which can meet the medical grade measurement. And at that time, we are choosing around FDA or CE. But finally, we chose FDA because it has a much higher requirement in terms of the accuracy and also the application barrier. And it comes out to be a very positive response because people all trust the FDA cleared devices. And also it helps us to get into the US market. And very important is that because we focus on sleep health. Okay, and we know that in the US, it is people are pretty mature about sleep health. Okay, they are much more aware when compared with the Asian market. And that's why when we start with, back in 2016, we start with the US market. And now, after 4 years, the market in Asia catch up. And now, so we are together with the FDA certification, now we are getting into the Asian market, like Malaysia recently.
Yeah, I think that also brings to my second question to you. In fact, I believe many electronic industry stakeholders are also considering whether they put the products through FDA to become what we call a medical device. By definition, is the intended purpose with a medical indication. Obviously, it provides some advantage, as Lydia mentioned. Yeah. You will have a higher barrier for your competitor to catch up with. Yeah. But the negative side is that you need a longer time for clearance and approval. Yeah. So if I would like to ask for your advice for the audience here, mostly from the electronics industry, how would you advise them when they consider the product either go for consumer healthcare, therefore it's not necessarily a medical indicated device, but still you can sell it in better price, or a assistive device that provide medical reference to the medical professionals, and that is another path. And the third path definitely is to go through a more stringent medical device compliances. So you have experience on that, and you have demonstrated to us you have been successful on Belun Ring. So what are your advices to us?
I think it's all depends on the vision and also positioning of the company. And thus, let's take Belun as an example. Like this time, because our ring is FDA clear, and we can catch the COVID outbreak. And as I mentioned in the slide, is our ring have recently, because of the COVID-19, we have together with a little communication hub, we can allow the doctors to remote monitoring the patient, no matter they are in a quarantine in a hotel or at home, okay? And just because of the FDA clearance. And that's why the doctors and nurses and nursing home can rely on our data, okay? So it is a very special segment that it takes longer time to develop and to get all the certification. But at the same time, it also allows you to capture some new market segment that you never thought about. Yeah, because for example, when people are asking about sleep health, there is a lot of gadgets in the market. But unfortunately, the numbers or the data that collected is very difficult for doctors to use as a reference for treatment. Okay, and especially because our positioning is in the long term to use the ring for chronic disease management. So it is almost a must in order to let the doctors to make use of the data, for example, in the future to build big data and analytics. Those data need to be very accurate. It's not just a gadget. And that's why I think if for those companies who would like to, in the long run, get into the medical field, we still advise that you get the medical certification is important.
Thank you, Lydia. I think you share a very important point, especially for manufacturers tapping, we call it a business opportunity during this period of the COVID-19 pandemic. FDA worldwide providing EUA, the emergency use of approval, that is only the medical device qualified products having these cutting edge advantages. So, but it is a hard path, right? Isn't it? It's not easy anyway. Thank you, Lydia. My next question to Roy Lim from Tung Hing Investment Limited. So I learned from your slide that your Timmy robots has a wide variety of application now. You have very diverse application in retail, in healthcare, in servicing, food and beverage, museum, etc. So how do you manage all these applications? So do you think any particular segment that you think in the coming 3 or 5 years may be the highest potential for your servicing robots to further expand the business into?
Yes, actually, the most important thing we are doing is elderly sector, because the people are getting older and there are a lot of viruses coming around because people are getting closer together. More people means there are more infection. So what we need is actually automate all the processes in the medical and the elderly sector so that these most vulnerable people can be safe first. That's what we do in priority. And then we will move on to some other necessities like restaurants, like a library. We don't want people to touch a lot of things. And we will gradually create a safer environment in the future. So definitely elderly first.
Okay, so maybe elderly service, clinical services are the blue ocean for servicing robots like this kind, and you're already into this segment. Yes. I come across some diagnostic center in Hong Kong. They have hundreds of patients every day in Central Business District, very high-rank office. And they also ask for some servicing robots, like when the patients come to the clinic, they need to do consent form in some cases. They need to put down the insurance number for claim, and they need to get the laboratory reports, and also some Q&A to brief the patients before they go through endoscopic diagnostic, etc. Do your robots have these kind of services ready? And how will you differentiate your robots with other robots like Pepper from SoftBank or Xiaohai from China? Many years before we see during crossing the border, there are already many similar kinds of robots in the market. So how do you differentiate? How do you tap the clinical services sector? Can you share with us more?
Yes, actually the most important part of our robot that makes it so popular right now is that it's open platform. We don't build anything that is specific to any industry. We build a completely open Android SDK. Everyone can write their own program for every one of their customers. So now we have built up this whole platform of whole lot of opportunities. And now we find the opportunities after we have the platform. So that is why Pepper cannot compete, because they are specific to the receptionist or playing videos for people, but they cannot connect third-party sensors. What we can do is whatever you want to install, whatever app you want to integrate into. For example, the restaurant ordering system, the patient management system, whatever. So we have a team to help these companies to connect their IoT products, their systems. And then they will find that, oh, okay, this robot is actually working for me. It's not you thinking of what you can do for me. It's I am thinking of what I can do for myself. So that is the key point that we tackle. And of course, we have a full team that helps integrate these services. And another very important point is the robot is very small. It is able to move around in a very tight area. That's very good for huge cities like Hong Kong, Tokyo. Normal big robot cannot actually go in between beds and disinfect with a UV light. But we can actually go next to your pillow and then disinfect it and then go to another pillow. So that's another important part. We built it small.
Yeah, thanks. I captured two very important points. First one, you really understand the local market pretty well. We are very crowded. We live in Hong Kong, and the elderly centers, unlike what we see in the overseas, the beds are next to each other. There's only very narrow aisle between, and it is hard to turn sharp corner for maybe overseas solutions. That is a very unique strength of your product. And I hear from Roy as well that you actually embrace competition. You allow open source, you allow SDK, Android, so just come and compete with me. Then you can have a better product as well. Yes. So that may be a good strategy that the audience would like to share when you're considering developing your own robots or e-health solution. Thank you, Roy.
Yes.
Thank you. So next comes Stuart. Let me declare, Stuart actually worked in my office as well. We share the same office, working together under the same office, the company called Multi-Scale Medical Robotics Center. But today, Stuart is in the capacity of RETRACTION. So we heard about Stuart. He's an expert on surgical devices for so many years. We heard about the telemedicine, telesurgery, telemonitoring, those very sexy words for years. But how long do you think it will take before we really can get access to them? Just like before the IoT, before the 5G being launched, we heard a lot about autonomous driving, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But from the automotive industry, they said, wow, it's a long way, don't believe it. So you're still driving your petroleum car, right? It's not all of us in electronics car. So what's the insight? How long can we really get the telesurgery in our clinic, in our hospital, or even for the home care?
It's a great question, Brian. Thank you. I think it will still take some years, I think is the very short answer. So what we've seen is in this area, a lot of it has been led, perhaps sadly, by the military. So I believe that they have that solution already, and 5G will help enormously with the speed of response and reduce the cost of this type of remote working. But I think we're seeing it coming, and particularly with COVID, as many of the other speakers have talked about already. I think it will come, and the costs of doing this type of remote sensing is coming down. So I think it will come, but it's not here today, not in a surgical sense. You know, today the surgeon is still in the operating room. The robots are connected by some substantial cables. There are also safety issues to consider if the surgeon is not in the operating room. But I think it will come. And we've seen that people can do business today almost remotely. You know, we can do deals, we can talk to people, we can do many things that we just didn't really embrace. And I think now in this current environment, it will drive the future of remote medicine. Many, many ways, many different types of remote medicine will come to fruition.
So my follow-up question for that is, what do you think is the major challenge to this? For example, taking again the automotive industry as an example, the technology already, connected car, IoT for everything, and we have autonomous driving overseas, even in China, there's a lot of successful cases being demonstrated, etc. But the connectivity, if we're talking about connectivity, we have a lot of experience for Zoom, for Team, and also the virtual conferencing, but we can accommodate frozen video for a few seconds for conference, it's fine. But if it's a surgery, how do you think, what is the major challenge that we should be reminded and take care of when this is fully ready and reliable?
I think there's a very good point, right? If you have a remote car, autonomous vehicle, or you have telesurgery, true telesurgery, you can't afford any downtime. That could be catastrophically dangerous. So I think the speed, the reliability of the connection is going to be absolutely vital. And I think then it comes down to an acceptance that it is safe. Obviously, the industries must make these devices safe, must make them reliable. Once they have achieved that, then I think it will come down to an acceptance, if you like, a patient acceptance or a user acceptance that this can be delivered in a safe and reliable way. So there's some big hurdles ahead. Mainly, some of them are psychological, others are technological. So some way to go, I think, but I think it will come. I really do believe that.
Yeah, so in this case, maybe the infrastructure still take time because for the reliability of the connectivity, it is not only a single company can make it happen. It's something like a city-wide governmental behavior to allow the connectivity to be fully covered, the whole city, or the reliability is really demonstrate up to the level that, for example, the FDA find it's fully reliable to allow also the surgeons fully feel comfortable to sign off that any incidents happen, they have to take the accountability of that. And insurance companies as well, they have to evaluate how much risk. So, but I believe as well that this is the way forward we should go at. But there may be some opportunity as well for the local industry and the suppliers. So my next question to Stuart again. So for the local industry, maybe surgical robotics is rocket science thing. They're doing OEM, ODM, OBM for years, but how do you think the Hong Kong local industry can get into this industry? How? And in what way they should go into it? Because they're already huge giants like Intuitive, CMR, Medtronic, J&J, and numerous robotic surgery company, very specialized in specific subspecialty as well. So for Hong Kong, what are the opportunities for us?
Well, I think there are many opportunities, Brian. I think because we have the infrastructure and we have the government funding, there's obviously partnership would be vital. So we have a vehicle where industry could come and partner with, say, multi-scale robotics or other institutions in Hong Kong. That's one very important thing is partnership, because these things are brutally expensive to develop. And also, I think if you take a broader scale for smaller companies, they could look at the accessories around robotic surgery. There are many, many small things that need to be solved. The big companies maybe just, even though they're big, they don't have all the bandwidth to think about, or they're not innovative any longer, so they can't see the small opportunities. And if the company's slightly bigger and slightly more financial horsepower behind them, procedure-specific robots, so smaller robots to do small dedicated tasks, I think will become the way of the future. Developing a big robot, that's very expensive and very risky, particularly in this current climate, given the new companies that are coming, even out of Hong Kong. We'll see in a few years some very interesting things. But I think smaller companies, the way is partnership with the institutions we have in Hong Kong, make those successful opportunities. I think they are there. It's not easy. It's an expensive business to get into, but I think the opportunities are there.
Well spoken. So the opportunity for Hong Kong probably also include a very good standing medical teaching hospital, medical faculties in both Chinese University and the University of Hong Kong, that they have innovative surgeons to support this innovative development. So stakeholders from electronics industry, or control automation, critical components, optical devices, and obviously definitely medical and healthcare device industry stakeholders still have a niche to start with something, as Stuart reminded, with the specific procedure and start with small item, then you can get the entrance and eventually see whether Hong Kong branded surgical robots can become reality with all these good efforts. Thank you, Stuart. And next, my question to Hasan. So thank you for your sharing from the overseas. And I learned from your presentation that you have around 80% of your products sold to China and 70% of your non-contact temperature assessment devices are in this application, non-contact temperature assessment. So my question, can you share with us how you start considering or have chosen Hong Kong as the starting point for you to set up the manufacturing site for chips? Because it is not quite common to have these manufacturing activities in Hong Kong nowadays, and your market actually in China. Have you ever considered putting your manufacturing site in China? So how can you share with us more how your insights on this?
Well, when we started Meridian Innovations, we looked at Hong Kong as a potential international city because we felt Hong Kong is accessible to China and is available to the whole world. And that's one of the reasons why we choose Hong Kong. And also one of the reasons is because of this very sensitive technology. We want our IP to be well protected, and Hong Kong has a pretty good history of IP protection. And the company is both set up in Singapore and Hong Kong. And Hong Kong being close to China, we were able to access to the Hong Kong Science Park clean room facility that we can actually move in and set up our equipment to be operated in the Hong Kong Science Park Class 100 clean room. So because of all these conditions and terms that we look at, so we decided to set it up in Hong Kong. And at the same time, there is also a couple of good universities in Hong Kong that we can access to some of the talents. Because in Meridian Innovation, we are not into manufacturing of semiconductor technology. We are more onto the research and development. And our goal is to use CMOS mass-producible technology to make thermal imaging sensor, which will drive the cost down and will enable this huge market that is needed for all this system that you have, because you need a lot of sensor, not only just a visual sensor, but you also need sensing temperature, sensing different gases. And our technology can enable that kind of sensing technology. So we were able to tap into some of the good graduates that basically graduate from Hong Kong Science and Technology University. They have a MEMS nano fab lab there, which they have a lot of experience, but they have no way to find a job in Hong Kong. So it is actually a good opportunity for Meridian Innovation to tap into all those resources and to also recruit talent from all over the world, because some of our technology co-founders that we are engaging with are from German, Turkish, Netherlands, UK. So we have very good talented people that we tap into, both in Hong Kong as well as internationally, to work on our technology.
Thank you, Hasan. So I heard that is because of the international connection in Hong Kong. We have an international platform, and well-protected IP in Hong Kong is one of the key essence that you choose Hong Kong as the manufacturing site. So we talk a lot about GBA, the Great Bay Area, Greater Bay Area in Hong Kong as part of the area member. So how do you think this niche advantage, as you have mentioned, about IP protection, or maybe that also related to the legal protection, mediation arrangement available in Hong Kong, can help your business? Does GBA provide you any new potential in the near future that you now can share with us, and how other similar business stakeholders can learn from your model?
Actually, I would like to say, besides just the Greater Bay Area, Meridian Innovation is also looking at a new microelectronics center that's being set up in Leung for 2013. This is a new mini fab facility that we can actually set up to expand our production line in terms of back-end processes. We are still a fabless company. Basically, our sensor is fab in Taiwan, and it comes to Hong Kong to basically do the wafer level vacuum packaging for the thermal imaging sensor. So we might move some of our production into the Greater Bay Area, and in fact, into China. But production and research and development are two separate things. Even if you know how to produce it by following a very fixed specific steps, you still do not have the access to the IP for the research and development of the new chip. So we are now moving into our second generation. So we will still keep our R&D base in Hong Kong as well as Singapore. We will have the advanced manufacturing in the microelectronics center and the mass production for the mass market, most probably in China or other part of the world.
Yeah, so it's glad to know you're also looking into Hong Kong to set up even expansion production site in Yunnan, Science Park. They have a microelectronics center to be commenced, etc. So my follow-up question to you, when we discussed with the tech company, one of the hurdles to enrich the R&D content in Hong Kong is how to get the right talent. Do you experience any challenge so far to attract talents from the mainland or overseas to Hong Kong to support your R&D work? Because in other sectors like optical sectors, even in surgery, robotic surgery, it's sometimes hard to find talent. And can you share with us how you overcome any challenge on this kind?
Well, talent is always a challenge for every company, especially when Meridian was a startup. But however, we have a very good team of people we recruited, our key technologies founders that we have recruited from Germany, Turkish, UK, as well as Netherlands, were able to actually train some of the new graduates from Hong Kong Science Technology University. In fact, I believe Hong Kong Science Technology University is ranked pretty high. They hired some of the top students from China, and these are the people that actually wants to come to Hong Kong and enjoy the freedom life, and I believe they are here to stay at most of the time. But imagine one of the person that I hired came to me and told me, say, Hasan, I'm willing to come and work for Meridian because I want to actually enhance my experience based on my education, not just do any project management. There's a lot of project manager jobs in Hong Kong doing this project, that project. But he was more interested in R&D. And I think from a Meridian standpoint, we have the key people that we actually have the top technologies train these new graduates. And now these new graduates are capable of understanding some of the technology, and they are training new graduates from new graduates. So we're actually growing step by step and building up a team. And that's the only way to expand. And in fact, the technology we work on is very new. It's a patented technology. It's a new disruptive technology. Instead of using vanadium oxide to do thermal sensing detection, we use CMOS with our design capability. We design a sensor that uses whole CMOS process to make the thermal imaging sensor. So the team actually work on new front end, exploring new process, new material, new design to enable this technology. So there is actually no one that come in and say, I know about this technology. Basically, they know about MEMS, they know about the process, but we have to basically work together. And once they come into Meridian and become part of the team, we actually are able to train them. And one of the things that Meridian wants to build in is that the people that comes into Meridian doesn't leave Meridian because they are part of, we bring in the US
startup culture that everybody owns a piece of company. We provide stock options to all the employees. So they felt that they are actually working for themselves in Meridian as we grow in this aspect. So the whole team member is part of the big family for Meridian in terms of product development for our future and for our growth. Because what we want to address is the billion-dollar market that will be turned on by this new technology for the thermal imaging sensor market.
Thanks, Hasan. So connections with local top-notch university, overseas university, Germany, Netherlands, stock options to staff like a family, that's all the essence to acquire the talent. But before we go to a more generic question, one more question for Hasan. So you mentioned about mobile phone applications for your thermal imaging technology. So can you share with us more? How do you think about the thermal imaging in mobile phone? Are we going to buy our phone with all your thermal sensors in like 3 years' time, or how would it happen?
Well, first of all, the technology needs to get smaller, and the technology needs to reduce in price a lot because, as you know, the current thermal imaging camera module costs hundreds of dollars, and we are just beginning to get to the technology that will enable the whole camera module for under $40. We believe in about 2 years, we'll most probably make the same camera module for around $10 with the new advanced process nodes. So I used to work in OmniVision technology. I was one of the early employee of OmniVision technology. I became the official of OmniVision technology. We drive CMOS image sensor when it was such a primitive sensing technology compared to CCD. In 90s, CCD dominates the whole market. CCD is very expensive, it's very power hungry, and it's not accessible because it's a custom process. So we use CMOS to enable this market. And we see the same thing happens with thermal imaging sensor. We believe our CMOS thermal imaging sensor will definitely make a product, a module that will be enabled to smartphone. So one of our product that we design as a reference design is an attachment. So here's what we got. It's a camera module attachment that we plug onto our mobile phone. So we can actually make all smartphones become a thermal imaging sensor. And with that, we can enable first the application that needs to go into it. And when the module becomes small enough and becomes cost effective and lower power consumption, it would then be embedded into the phone. You like all kind of products. So the first camera that you see with PC was a USB camera. And that's where video conferencing starts. Now every PC has a USB camera. Every laptop has a camera built in. So, and also the first phone that you have out there, which is a feature phones in the 2000s, was an attachment. It was an attachment to your phone. And sooner or later, when the application becomes robust and becomes popular, it will be embedded into the system. So we see the mobile phone will be used heavily. It could be used for your daily health monitoring. It can be used for even doctor being able to consult. You can consult with doctor by taking thermal imaging of yourself to show part of your face, where you are not feeling well, and maybe there's a blood clot somewhere in your face that be able to identify. Those are some of the applications that people have thought of right now, but there will be a lot more to come. And when that is enabled, it will then automatically goes into the phone.
Thank you, Hasan. So thank you. In fact, your CMOS thermal imaging is already a disruptive technology that transforms how we use the application for thermal imaging. So before we close, we are running out of time, but before we close this section, I would also like to ask the speaker on the, here, so what are the, apart from Hasan mentioned about the disruptive technology, what kind of disruptive electronics technology you think will transform your business in near future? We have Belun, we have Tung, Hing, Timmy, we have retraction surgical robotics. Just tell us maybe one thing. So a very short sharing on your insights. What are the disruptive technology or things that will transform us, and we can feel it in near future?
I think it may not need to be a disruptive technology, but because of the COVID, people now is more acceptance to teleconferencing, teleconsultation, telemedication, and even the pharmaceutical company deliver the drugs through tele. And so I think this will be a great opportunity, especially to Hong Kong industry, because we are good at application. So we will envision that in the coming future, tele will become a new normal, and this will create a lot of opportunities for electronics.
Thank you, Lydia. Roy.
And for us, we are actually working on a remote sensor which can remotely, from 1.5 meters away, it can detect your pressure, blood pressure, blood glucose level, your respiration. So that will completely change the automation of a medical center, because now I can move the robot and then remotely and undisruptingly detect everything of a patient, and then I can leave. So next year we will see this happening.
Thank you, Roy. Stuart.
I think for me, Brian, my view would be miniaturization of surgical devices is becoming absolutely reality. So I think higher speed electronics, smaller electronics that can be put inside the body. I think in a nutshell, that's what I think we'll see coming in the near future. And I think Hong Kong's well placed to exploit that opportunity.
Thank you, Stuart. So thank you so much. Before we close this section, first of all, thank you for joining us. I hope you all enjoy all the sharing of the insights from our speakers on stage and from online. We see a very great discussion just now, and we just have to bring this to end of the forum. Once again, thank you so much for Lydia, Roy, Stuart, and Hasan's insight sharing. We look forward to meeting you soon at future Hong Kong TDC events. Thank you and goodbye.